A llama is not a shepherd, and a goat is not her flock. Yet in the quiet, unassuming expanse of a northern farmstead, a profound defiance unfolds daily. It is a defiance of instinct, of species, and of every established norm of livestock behavior. This is not just a tale of two animals, but an inquiry into the nature of protection itself. We look to Elsie the Llama, standing guard over a small, frail creature named Timmy the Goat. For 2 years, she has been his shadow, his shield, his entire world. The question we must face is this: what trauma or devotion compels an animal, bred for aloofness, to adopt and defend the weakest of her herd? It is a bond forged in unexpected vulnerability, chronicling the day-to-day vigilance that kept a vulnerable animal safe against all odds. If you're already enjoying this story, a quick like and share makes all the difference. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. The setting is a large, rambling livestock operation in upstate New York, a landscape defined by rolling hills and fence lines that stretch toward a dense, unforgiving tree line. It is the kind of farm where animals are kept in groups: sheep, goats, and a small herd of llamas, for efficiency and companionship. The llamas, in particular, serve a purpose beyond wool. They are natural, if temperamental, guards, known for their intimidating presence against coyotes and stray dogs. Elsie, the llama at the center of our story, was always the largest and perhaps the most solitary of her group. She carried herself with the signature aloofness of her species, observing the chaos of the farm from a slight distance, her posture always rigid, always ready. Her large, dark eyes seemed to take in more than the typical animal, a silent sentinel who understood the quiet rhythms and sudden dangers of the farm. Timmy's world, when he entered it, was precarious. He arrived as a bottle baby, too small and too weak to thrive alongside his own kind. He was born prematurely, suffering from persistent frailty and a nervous disposition that kept him constantly shivering, even in mild weather. His own mother, overwhelmed or simply unable to bond, had pushed him away. In the harsh, pragmatic environment of the farm, Timmy was a clear target. He lacked the strength to compete for food, the speed to evade a perceived threat, and the innate confidence to stand his ground. He was, by all accounts, an animal whose survival was entirely dependent on human intervention, a reality that chafed against the very nature of the farm's operation. He needed a protector, and the goats offered none. The other goats saw weakness, a liability to their own survival. They would butt him away from the hay, leaving him shivering and isolated in the corners of the paddock. It was this persistent vulnerability that set the stage for the impossible partnership. Elsie and Timmy shared a space, but never an interaction, until one particularly cold autumn evening changed the fundamental physics of their existence. The llama continued her watch, and the goat continued his struggle for mere warmth. The wide, quiet world of the farm had deemed Timmy expendable. But that cold night, the silent sentinel was watching. The pivotal moment arrived during a sudden, unexpected cold snap that plummeted temperatures far below the seasonal average. The animals huddled together, instinctively seeking collective warmth. But Timmy the goat, already weakened, found himself repeatedly pushed to the periphery. He was attempting to find refuge near a feed trough when a sudden surge from a larger ewe sent him tumbling into the mud, shivering violently. He lay there, too cold to stand, his small body barely a movement in the fading light. The farm hands were long gone, and the darkness began to press in. The other animals were oblivious. The sheep and goats were focused only on their own survival. But Elsie was watching. She had positioned herself near the fence line, her long neck occasionally scanning the perimeter for predators, but her attention was drawn back to the small, pathetic figure in the mud. It wasn't instinct that drew her forward. It was a choice that defied the detachment of her breed, a response to a vulnerability so absolute it seemed to resonate with some deep, unseen part of her own nature. She approached not with the typical llama's aggressive posturing, but with a slow, deliberate cadence. She moved to the side of the tiny goat, and instead of walking past, she simply lay down. She positioned her massive body directly between Timmy and the rest of the herd, creating a warm, solid wall against the cold wind and the indifference of the other animals. Timmy, likely sensing the enormous, radiating warmth, instinctively nestled himself against her thick wool, finding a refuge he had never known. In that moment, an unbreakable bond was sealed. The massive guard animal had elected herself the adoptive protector of the smallest, weakest member of the farm. The days that followed that cold night established a routine that was both touching and utterly unusual for the farm. Elsie and Timmy were inseparable. The physical size difference between them, the towering llama, elegant and strong, and the tiny, wobbly goat, perpetually unsure of his footing, only made the intimacy of their connection more profound. Elsie didn't just tolerate Timmy. She integrated him into her very existence. When she grazed, Timmy grazed alongside her, always positioned on the side facing the larger, potentially aggressive sheep or the farmer's dog. When she rested, lying down to chew her cud, Timmy would often curl up directly beneath her neck, finding the warmest, most protected spot on the entire property. This was more than just proximity. It was a complex display of protective behavior. Elsie began to actively mediate Timmy's interactions with the rest of the herd. If a ewe approached Timmy too quickly, Elsie would pivot her body, a clear, intimidating motion that signaled a boundary. If the other goats became too rambunctious, she would emit a low, guttural hum, a sound usually reserved for warning predators, and the goats would immediately scatter. She became a living fortress, a constant moving perimeter of safety that allowed Timmy to develop without the perpetual stress of competition or fear. The transformation in Timmy was gradual but undeniable. Protected by his massive, self-appointed guardian, his nervous shaking lessened. He began to eat more robustly, no longer fearing displacement from the feed trough. His steps became more confident, though he never strayed far from Elsie's side. To the farm hands, it was a constant, almost comical sight, the majestic llama and the scruffy little goat moving in perfect, synchronized tandem. They watched as Elsie developed a specific attentiveness, a gentle tilt of her head when Timmy bleated, an immediate response to his smallest needs. This bond was a quiet, daily miracle, challenging the notion that empathy is exclusive to our own species, or even our own genus. The bond seemed to satisfy a deep, mutual need. For Timmy, it was survival and warmth. But for Elsie, it appeared to be the fulfillment of a purpose, a release from the llama's inherent solitary nature into a demanding yet deeply rewarding role of nurturer and guardian. She was no longer just a guard against external predators. She was a personal protector against the everyday brutality of herd life. This unwavering closeness became the farm's most enduring paradox, a living illustration that true sanctuary can be found in the most unlikely pairing. The quiet stability of their bond, however, could not last forever. Nature, even on a domesticated farm, is an environment of constant negotiation and sudden threat. The proving ground for Elsie and Timmy's commitment arrived during the depths of winter. A cold, moonless night when a persistent layer of snow muffled the sounds of the farm, providing perfect cover for a threat from the woods. A pair of coyotes, lean and desperate in the freezing weather, had breached the perimeter fence line. They moved with a predatory silence, their eyes fixed on the easy targets among the sleeping herd. The other animals, relying on their collective senses, stirred nervously, but the panic hadn't yet set in. The coyotes were closing on the main cluster of sheep, but a few feet away they caught the scent of the solitary goat, slightly separated by the imposing bulk of the llama. Elsie, the quiet sentinel, was the first to react. She had been resting, but her head snapped up, her ears twitching, instantly locating the danger. The predatory instinct of the coyotes met the full, aggressive force of the protective llama. She rose to her full height, her shadow immense in the faint starlight, and let out a series of high-pitched, piercing alarm calls, sounds that were far more terrifying than a sheep's bleat or a goat's cry. The coyotes paused, momentarily startled by the sheer volume and unnatural aggression coming from the typically placid livestock. Elsie did not hesitate. She moved not toward the general danger, but directly to shield Timmy, placing the goat beneath her belly, her long legs rooted firmly. The coyotes, driven by hunger, decided to test the massive animal. As one of the predators lunged toward the periphery of her defense, Elsie's defense was immediate and brutal. She reared up and drove her long front legs down with stunning, focused power. Llamas, often underestimated, are capable of delivering a jarring kick. She struck the coyote not once, but twice, forcing a yelp of pain. The severity of her reaction, the unyielding ferocity with which she defended the small, weak creature, was more than the coyotes had bargained for. This wasn't just a guard animal defending territory. This was a guardian defending her own. They realized this bond was not worth the risk. A few tense moments passed, marked only by Elsie's steady, rhythmic humming, a soft, low sound of reassurance meant only for the small, shivering animal tucked beneath her. The coyotes turned and retreated back into the muffled silence of the snowy woods. The attack was the ultimate test, and Elsie's commitment proved to be absolute. She was prepared to face down a lethal threat for the sake of her tiny, adopted companion. The aftermath of the coyote encounter was not dramatic, but profound. The other farm animals, sensing the return of safety, quickly settled back into their sleep. But Elsie remained standing, her body a silent, powerful monument to her protective promise. The sheer weight of her commitment was now undeniable, documented not by a camera, but by the immediate, silent fear of the two predators who realized they had challenged a force greater than mere hunger. For several minutes, Timmy remained hidden beneath her, his small body a sanctuary within the sanctuary. When he finally emerged, he didn't bolt or run. He simply stood close, nudging his head gently against Elsie's foreleg, a gesture of thanks that transcended language. It was a moment of pure, unconditional communication, a testament to the fact that profound loyalty is not a construct of species, but of shared experience. The true apex of the story is not the victory over the coyotes, but the quiet, deep catharsis that followed. It became clear to everyone on the farm that this relationship was not accidental. It was essential. The sight of Elsie and Timmy became a daily reminder of the protective capacity of the Wildheart, even when confined to a farmstead. She had taken the most vulnerable soul in the enclosure and given it the unshakable certainty of survival. The farm hands stopped worrying about Timmy's frailty. He was, in fact, the most protected creature on the property. The llama's devotion had transformed the trajectory of a life that was meant to be short and weak. Elsie the Llama had not just guarded a goat, she had nurtured a spirit. She had proven that the walls we perceive between species can be utterly meaningless in the face of a genuine, deep-seated need for connection. Today, Elsie and Timmy remain together, an enduring example that has moved beyond being an oddity and into the realm of modern-day fable. The farm hands no longer simply see a llama and a goat. They see a relationship that embodies unwavering loyalty and the power of chosen family. Their bond has become a quiet staple of the farm's existence, a visual testament to the resilience of love across the dividing lines of species. The story of Elsie and Timmy is a powerful challenge to the notion of fixed instinct. We often categorize animals by their inherent, non-negotiable behaviors. The llama is aloof, the coyote is a predator, the goat is prey. But here, the llama abandoned her inherited detachment to embrace the role of the devoted guardian. She looked past the species label, past the size disparity, and saw only a creature in absolute need. In an often harsh and indifferent world, the enduring friendship of these two farm animals offers a profound, simple truth: that the greatest acts of empathy often emerge from the most unlikely places. Their sanctuary was not a specific structure or an official decree, but a bond woven from wool, fear, and an extraordinary sense of protective duty. It is a story that resonates because it reminds us that to offer sanctuary is simply to make a conscious choice to stand between vulnerability and the world's indifference. The llama taught the farmer, and in turn taught us, that true strength lies not in the size of the body, but in the depth of the commitment we are willing to offer another living being. When we witness an act of such pure, instinct-defying kindness, we are given a brief, beautiful window into the potential of the world, a quiet farmstead where a giant animal made a life-saving promise to a tiny friend, proving that the language of loyalty is universal and always available to those who choose to speak it. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. It truly helps us bring more stories like this to light. We have a question for you. What was the single moment in this story that resonated with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one.